Hey, this is Terry with Openly Concealed with Terry Piper, and I'm here in the headquarters in the heart of Idaho Enhanced Academy. And I've got a special guest star today. The basis of this podcast is really gun related, all the good, the bad, ugly of concealed carry. But we're going to introduce some other things into this. I'm all about having conversations. So I like to bring people in for conversations and just talk about the state of the world, a lot of different stuff. And it will be really geared towards concealed carry, but a lot of other topics. We want to make it fun. And so this being the first podcast, it's going to be probably a little shorter and very organic. We've got a few questions we're going to talk about, but really just having conversations. And so just introducing Phil Henderson. Phil Henderson and I graduated high school together. So we've known each other a long time. He grew up with me. We grew up spending the night at each other's houses, and so been friends for a good long time. And so Phil is the owner of Mountain States Media, and he does, and I'll let him talk about his business. And then he also does a podcast with his son called Phil's Squared. And so if you're watching this podcast, pop over to Phil's podcast, which I think they're going to start here and not too long, but we'll talk about that, and we'll have Phil talk about that podcast and kind of what brought up that idea and what they're doing. So I'm going to bring Phil into the feed now. And
there I am.
We'll just start having conversations. Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good.
Good. Hey, you have the same microphone as I do. That's cool.
I do. Yeah.
Somebody might have recommended that for me.
I may have done that. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know his name, but his initials are Phil Henderson.
Yes. So that could be my son too.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. So, Phil, just tell us a little bit about your business, Mountain States Media, and what you guys do.
Okay, we do mostly event media. So if there, which to talk about last year, that meant we didn't do very much at all because all events were called off. But
so this COVID thing really affected your business.
When March hit, because I also freelanced a lot in broadcast media. So right before all the COVID, I mean, we knew COVID was around, but before they did the shutdowns, I had done the girls and boys basketball championships here at the Idaho Center, where we had 4 cameras and streamed them live and that. And then I was working for Pluto TV, which is part of CBS, and we were doing all of the Big Sky Championship tournament at now it's called like Idaho Central something. I am not sure. It used to be
somewhere.
Yeah, CenturyLink, but now it's Idaho Central something. We were working that, and we had the championship game to air on that Saturday live on ESPN, and we had worked quite a few games. And Thursday morning of that week, they shut everything down. I mean, the players were out practicing, getting ready for their next game, shut it all down.
Oh, wow.
And so on the side, while I'm building my business, I also drive Uber and that. So I drove a lot of the players to the airport, some of the coaches, and it was just so disappointing because a lot of the seniors, this was the last opportunity for them to play in a championship game or in a tournament, and it was just shut down. There was no ESPN game, and then after that, it was just a domino effect because everything we had scheduled for last, spring, summer, and fall either got rescheduled and canceled or just canceled. And so I did very little last year having to do with my business, but now we're having a pretty busy year. Hopefully it will stay that way. And so we do rodeos, concerts, like I said, basketball. There's some demolition derby in there that we're doing this year. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
So just a little background on Phil too. Phil, ever since I've known him, has been in broadcast media. So he did, he worked at most of the radio stations, most of the TV stations in the Valley, and then went on to become an instructor at Compass Charter School. where he actually had a program for broadcast media, which I think is awesome. That's like a tech or a trade school type scenario where kids actually learn a real talent and not just book knowledge of stuff. So I really admired that. And then when I was an executive for another holster company, we used to film all of the commercials for that company in the studio at Compass Charter School. And
and the big green wall.
Yeah, green screen. And so Phil kind of put me anywhere he wanted me. And so it was just fun times. And then so we did all the commercials for this particular company.
The other place.
The competitor now. So,
and I heard you in your intro. I mean, I was thinking when you were introing me that I think it was third grade that we would have like really got to know each other, because that's when I started at Payette Christian Academy, and you and both your brothers were going there. And I don't know when because you were a year ahead of me until I skipped a year. So
and then I was kind of in and out. So I went, and then I went back to public school, and I went back to Payette Christian, and I think we really connected the junior, senior years. Of high school.
We had the best senior class of 5 people. I think it was 5. Yes,
it was huge, man. I'm telling you, we got lost in that school.
Oh yeah, I mean, learning names. I mean, it was almost impossible.
Yeah. So anyway, we grew up together, I grew up in the pawn business, and it's really what started my passion for firearms. I mean, I started handling guns when I was just a little kid, and then just went on to start working on them. And then when I was 16, my brother shot me with a 12 gauge inside our shop. Playing around with a Winchester Model 97. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny too, not ironic. It's, when we use the term playing around, because the first thing you think of is you shouldn't be playing with a 12 gauge shotgun, no matter where you are. Yeah. Yes, I remember that. And I always knew with you in that time period where we really connected that you were going to do something with guns, whether it be a hobby or your life or whatever.
Really?
And I think it's funny, at that time, I also knew with myself, because I grew up in a house that my dad's very pro gun, but he owned one pistol.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go hunting. I didn't really handle firearms except for when I was with my friends. And so we were in kind of 2 different places, and I was a tech guy. I knew I was going to be in radio and everything, and then TV came along later. But I think it's funny that in little old Payette, Idaho, we both kind of figured out kind of our directions, didn't know how we were going to get there.
Yeah, what's funny is I didn't have any inclination that I was going to end up where I am today. And even though, that passion, because, with my brother shooting me, lots of accidents. I mean, guns were easy access in the pawn business. And so it was an everyday endeavor to get guns pointed at me.
Oh, yeah.
And then that happened. And then there was an incident where my dad almost blew up my mom's head with a handgun.
On purpose or accident?
So the story is he had a black powder pistol, and he didn't know how to check it to see if it was loaded. And so he put a cap on it and stuck it to my mom's head and pressed the trigger. And it was a dud. And so this is talking about the things that kind of shaped what I do.
Right.
So he put another cap on it, pointed at the ceiling, and blew a hole through the ceiling.
Oh my gosh.
So
wow.
That made a huge impression on my mind. And I remember my dad being psychologically unreeled from that incident.
Oh yeah.
The gravity of what could have happened. And
that's like a PTSD sort of thing there, that it was more, if you believe in a higher power, that you were meant to point the one at the ceiling because I'm helping you out because you're an idiot. Yeah.
Speaking of a higher power, honestly, it was kind of my wife that said, God's given you too many opportunities to not be here. And it's kept you safe. I mean, I've literally had guns blow up, just young and dumb in the pawn business. Guns were easy access. So I'd grab a gun off the shelf and modern ammo and an old gun and blow a barrel off a gun, blow a gun up. hunting deer down on the islands with a bunch of friends with shotguns and having slugs literally graze my ears that had reflected off the water or come through the trees where I was on the other side of the island. And you know, God really had a hand on, like, you know, he's an idiot, but I'm going to keep him safe.
There's some hope.
We're going to, we're going to turn this into something. And so it was really my wife that prompted me to start getting training and learning how to teach, because it became my passion. I wanted to make sure that other people didn't end up in the same boat as I did. So, And you, what do you remember about the pawn shop days?
Oh, I just remember, well, I mean, the big thing I think anyone at that time would remember is that it was called the world's largest pawn shop.
Actually, technical, world's largest pawn shop.
Okay.
Yes. If it says "the," you have to. But if it doesn't have "the," then it's not a fact. It's just a name.
Right. And I remember your dad explaining that to me as a teenager. I think we were standing in the old building across the street that was much smaller, and it was the world's largest.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him about that, and he was telling me that, you know, it's all in the name. I'm not claiming to be the world's largest pawn shop, but the name of my business is World's Largest Pawn Shop. But that's what you remember, you know, so it's got to be, you know.
Oh, and people walk in and like, I've been in bigger pawn shops than this in Texas. I'm like, you never be the biggest. Well, your sign says it. No, it says World's Largest Pawn Shop. It's a name. And so I found myself constantly having to explain that to people, because they're like, no, you're not. Cool.
I just remember spending a lot of hours in that building, the bigger building. The amount of what was it that you was it Pepsi that you drank?
Oh, I was
oh my gosh, you had a problem early on with Pepsi.
I had a very big problem.
Wow, you consumed a lot of caffeine in your younger days.
Oh my gosh, it was I could sit down and watch a movie and drink a 6-pack.
Oh yeah,
no problem. Easy. I was so addicted, and you know, I've cut a lot of sugar out of my diet, so I still like soda, but not in the near mass quantities that I used to drink it. But.
Well, and here I am. I don't drink hardly any soda, and I probably weigh twice as much as you. So, you know, what does that mean? So,
I've learned one thing, that everybody's metabolism is different. And so, my son is like 6'6" and thin as a rail. He's built like me in high school. I have a picture of me. So you were the varsity coach. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah,
I was the varsity assistant coach.
Was it varsity or junior varsity?
It was junior varsity.
Junior varsity.
And so I have a picture of me walking through the gym, and I don't know if you remember my fake leather pants.
Oh yes.
So I'm wearing a PCA, like assistant coach red shirt, and I'm walking through the gym, and I'm thin. I'm like really, really thin. And you know my son Zach, he's like super thin, super tall. I was built just like that, and so when I see my son eating like terribly, I'm like, dude, you know, I used to have your same build. This is what you got to look forward to.
Do you? And I'm sorry to get off the subject here, but it's the same gym. And do you remember the story about that earthquake that was in Chalice in like '82 when I was sitting in
sick?
Yes, and your brother Troy.
I do remember this.
Was bouncing the ball down the court. I think it was him alone. And we're sitting, didn't we have like picnic tables or something?
Yeah. Off to
so we're like,
the gym.
Yes. So we're sitting, I forget who it was, me and a couple other guys just sitting there watching early in the morning.
I think was it Paul Silver?
It was probably Paul and maybe Jeff.
Okay.
And, or Kenny, I don't know, but we're all sitting there. And I'm looking out at your brother bouncing the ball, and I could swear the gym is rocking as he's bouncing. And I looked at one of the other guys, and I'm like, does it seem like Troy's moving the gym? And then we found out, because it's not like today where you get instant news and everything else. We found out much later at that exact time the Chalice earthquake was going on. So I thought your brother, and we had a concrete gym.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there amazed that it's like, wow, he's really, pounding it into the
Everybody I
ground.
talked to said it was like in total cadence with the
Right,
flow.
right, exactly. He was just
like,
walking him. Yes.
whoa,
Yep.
what is going on right here? Yeah.
And it took a while before I put 2 and 2 together. So
Oh, that's so funny. So, we grew up in a little town called Payette, which is right next to Fruitland, which is where our pawn shop was. And
in the Oregon border.
And the Oregon border. Yep. And I just remember as kids, we got to run around. I mean, we were walking, driving all over. And of course, Phil and I might have caused a little mischief in the little
here and there.
Yeah. If you ever saw a little red Toyota diesel pickup haunting the town, that was Phil and I probably, or Paul and I. Paul was like very straight laced, and we were a little more, I guess, on the edge.
Yeah, our laces weren't as straight.
No, we were a little. We might have been hellions. I don't know.
Yes, at times.
I remember going to a men's prayer breakfast, and some old guy's like, "Oh, this generation," talking about how bad we were. And my dad actually said, "Hey, now listen. If my boys did what I did when I was young, they'd be in jail right now. So I don't think they're as bad as we think they are." I'm like, "Whoa, who are you?"
So now, and this is a classic one, and I don't know if flatulence can be shared about on your podcast. So let me know if I shouldn't go forward. But
it is family friendly, so
yeah, okay. I'll keep it. I'll pick my words. But Terry and I were out on like a Friday night, and your father had told us to be home, I think by midnight, and we were tiptoeing into the house about 12:15 or so. We had missed our curfew, but his house, you would enter on the second floor, and then your bedroom was downstairs in the basement area, the first floor. And I remember us tiptoeing through the kitchen, and then all of a sudden I hear this door fling open, the lights turn on. There's your dad standing in only a pair of white briefs.
Whitey tighties.
Yes. And he's screaming, "I've only got one thing to say." And I'm freaking out like we're so in trouble. And then he just let out the longest fart known to man. He turns around, he goes back, closes the bedroom door, and leaves. And I just remember being in shock, but also laughing inside.
Thinking we were like horrible trouble.
Right. Oh, yeah, it was going to happen.
So a little backstory on my dad. He had a very bad flatulence problem because he had a triple intestinal bypass. So things like went through pretty quickly. And so
water.
He was known far and wide for his flatulence. So,
yes, they were classic.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Fun times in the Piper house.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway. Yeah. So it was, my childhood really kind of drove. And that's just interesting that that you even had the idea that I was going to do something in the gun realm.
I could just see it because you had an interest. And I mean, in my own life, I knew that my interest, no matter if I was actually going to get there or not, I could see that interest in you. So I just thought it was cool that later on, and both of us took several different turns and weaves and that before we actually got to where.
How many careers?
Oh yeah.
It's
our mini
crazy.
careers.
Yeah, I never thought that I would. Oh yeah, our musical career.
Oh,
remember that? That was like early on. So
hard to find that album
called Extreme Elite with another classmate named Ken Sule, and it was what was our hit? It was
Get It Right. Oh yeah.
Get It Right, yeah. And none of us really knew how to play or sing.
Or sing.
We were making noise in the what used to be a dog kennel that my dad turned into a guest house.
Yeah, it was like right next to the pool.
Yeah, so we had the house, guest house, pool, tennis court.
And we're practicing out there, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it was really just making noise.
And there may still be an audio recording existing somewhere, but I don't know if it. Well, we recorded on a cassette. Whether or not that still exists or it's not warped, I hope it never gets out because we can talk about it as though it was much better than it actually was.
Yeah, it was pretty hideous. I
Yes.
remember right, it was almost like slam dance, sort of like get it right, bounce off the wall, bounce off
Yeah,
the
we were screamo before
wall.
screamo came along. Yes. Yeah,
Hey, we pioneered some music there.
that's
Too bad
right.
nobody ever heard it. Oh my gosh. Anyway, yeah. So it's been an interesting ride from being a kid in Payette, Idaho, to both of us now living in the Boise area. I live in
Yep.
Nampa. Bill lives in Meridian, and it's just a different kind of world. We talk about this COVID thing. We talk about what's been happening in the past with Antifa, BLM, and we've
Hmm.
seen an insane amount of folks that a year ago wouldn't have even thought of buying a gun and ammo and getting protection. And I'm seeing a lot of people that I would classify as more liberal in their thinking. And
Right.
I don't like to label people, but people that would normally not even consider really anti-gun,
Right.
that are now going, I need a gun. I bought a gun. I bought 3 guns,
Right.
rifle, shotgun, and a pistol.
And I want to know how to use it.
them, and
Yeah.
I bought all the ammo to go with them. And it's been really kind of crazy how big that segment is getting from those
And I
that are
think,
on the regular.
without getting political, when you mentioned the BLM and the Antifa and that, I think so many people, because we are kind of sheltered here in Idaho,
Yeah,
that a lot of it, yes, has to do with those things, but it has to do with, if those things can happen, what else can happen? And there's so much unknown, and you just want to protect yourself and your family. So, and that's a good thing about what's happened over the last year, is we're no longer looking at it as gun being a bad 3-letter word, but that it's a tool,
yeah,
and that you need to learn how to use your tools right, because the time may come, and you hope it doesn't, but you
absolutely.
sure want to be sure that you know how to use that tool if you need it.
Yeah. And Phil's been through my class a few times because he's
Mhm.
done a lot of video work for me through the classes. And so, my approach is a lot different than a lot of instructors out there. Um, I don't know how many times I've heard the mentality, shoot to kill, and,
Mhm.
you do what you have to do. And I agree with that, but a gun is the tool of last resort. And, the banner that I fly in any class, if you take from me, is that you better pray to God you never have to do it, because it's
Right.
going to change everything psychologically, emotionally, financially, as it pertains to the legal side of things, and with our freedom. You go to jail, and then all those things that you were fighting for in the first place go away, because
Right.
now you're a convicted felon. And so, um, we're not going to be victims. God didn't design us to be victims, but we weren't designed to kill, maim, and destroy. And at the
Right.
end of the day, that's really what you're looking at. And
Right.
so, people aren't, we're not geared for that. We're not geared to kill. And so we have to, in that moment when there's no other choice, have to step across that line. And we're just not designed that way. And
Hmm.
people don't understand that psyche, and how that changes everything. And some people think they have the fortitude to do it. And I say, yeah, probably not. And so, I've been accused of dissuading people from doing this. That's never my objective. My objective is to give you the realities, because I've been doing this for a long time.
Hmm.
And then you have to choose to hopefully make that right choice, because uh, at the end of the day, everything changes in that moment. And it takes me back to, I think one of those things that really changed my mentality in this whole thing was working at the pawn shop, working late every night, a particular week. And I didn't have I had a gun on me that whole week. And I don't know if you remember this incident, but
I remember. Is that when you had your own place?
no, this was
Oh,
when
that was before.
so you're talking about when I sold the business.
Right. Oh,
That's a
yes.
whole another,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that in another episode. But
Okay.
this particular, I was 17. It was my junior summer, and I was working late every night that week. We were a busy store. We had 2 entrances, a retail and a pawn entrance. And I was working late, had a gun on every night, a little Charter Arms Bulldog 44 special on my hip every night that week. And So I'm doing my thing. Everything was good. It was Friday night, and Joe and his best friend Andy Smith were in the shop. And Joe was at the other end of the building on the phone talking to his girlfriend. And Andy was in the back room with me in the pawn room, which there was a little step up. There was a big open desk that was kind of, you could see from that position over the whole sales floor. And then there was another door that went back to the pawn room. So we're back there talking, and we hear what sounds like an explosion and glass shatter. And my first thought was, oh man, Joe lit an M80 and blew something up. We had been lighting off fireworks earlier that day. So
Right.
I'm like, oh, Joe, what did you do? So I stepped out of the pawn room onto the lip of that edge, and down this one particular wall, there was a whole row of TVs and VCRs on that back wall. And so I was looking through that shelving, and I could see this big old guy with a baseball bat running through the building. And that particular night, I did not have a gun on. And I'm like, and I can't remember what my mentality was, but if I were to assume,
Right.
I would say that it was like law of probability. Nothing had happened, so nothing's going to happen. And or the fact that strength in numbers, Joe and Andy were there, so I wasn't alone. So maybe I didn't feel as like threatened or worried. But in any case, I didn't have a gun on that night. And so so here comes this man running through the building. He gets,
There's Fitz.
hey,
He's joining us.
is he an attack cat?
Oh, no, not at all. He's a lover, not a fighter.
So this individual, the subject, gets all the way to the end of the shelving, and he doesn't see me until he clears the shelving, because I'm looking at him through the shelving. And he looks over. As he's looking over, he's still running, and he trips and falls and rolls over, and he's got the back clutch to his chest. And I'm looking at him. I'm 17 years old, man. I don't know anything.
Right.
And so I'm looking down, and I'm like, crap, what do I do? And my first instinct was to head out the door. And so I busted down the lane out the door, and I get to my truck, and something I've done a million times, put the key in the door and unlock it and get in. Drop my keys 4 times trying to get in the truck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, what is happening to me?
That adrenaline's running through you. Yeah.
Yep, stress. And so as I finally get the key in the door and I'm just starting to turn it, I hear more glass shatter and what sounds like an explosion. Tempered glass, when you hit it, it just like,
right.
And so I'm like, man, Joe's still in there, Andy's still in there. And my first instinct was, and you remember my white 86 Toyota 4x4.
Yeah.
It was kind of jacked up, had tires rims on it, roll bar, and I had some lights on it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to back it up, light him up like it's Christmas, high beams and all my lights on the truck. And when he comes out, I'm going to mow him over. That was my thought. And so I backed my truck around, pointed at the front door. And I remember subconsciously revving my engine with my foot on the clutch. And next thing I know, this gentleman steps out of the back door with a 357 Magnum, a box of shells, and a bat, that bat he broke in with. And I'm like, and I started second guessing everything I was thinking about doing, because I'd even thought, well, maybe I could just pin him against the wall, or, and I'm like, man, if I run him over, that's homicide. And I'm trying to process this whole thing.
Right.
And I'm going, man, I'm second guessing everything I just thought about. And he runs off into the alley. And so, and the thing that makes this whole thing interesting is I knew this man.
Oh, okay.
Knew this man very well. Knew his mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, in-laws. Whole family were really good customers of ours. And the gentleman's name was Sam. And I'm like, I'm 17 years old and I don't know anything. And so I went home that night worrying that Sam was going to come cave my head in with a baseball.
Right.
And so I get up the next morning to find out that Sam, my dad found this out because my dad went and visited Sam in jail. We didn't press charges, but what happened was he was over drinking and he was already depressed. And this is what the family told me later. He was already depressed, and he said he thought somebody slipped him a Mickey. And I always say, when we start drinking alcohol, it amplifies our emotions. So if you're already in depression, it can peak or hit the valley. And so if I were a betting person, I'd say that's probably kind of where he was. But so his thought was, I'm going to break in, steal a gun, and shoot myself. So he was literally over the bridge by the cemetery, by where our school was.
Okay.
Going out into the Oregon slope, had the gun to his head, ready to just do the deed and drop into the river. And he started thinking about his kids and didn't do it. And so he turned himself in. My dad went and visited him at the jail. Like I said, we didn't press charges. So anyway, this guy's a great guy, nice guy. I mean, I knew
Right. He was down on his luck and having rough times. Yep.
Yeah, and it just shows that sometimes we get into that depressive state, and we need help. We can't do it on our own. And so anyway, found all that out, and I think about that day a lot, and I think how it really that night could have changed the trajectory of everything I know today. Because as a 17-year-old, what would my life have been like taking the life of a man that I knew?
Oh yeah.
Because honestly, I had, and this is where with right we use might, and we think we're justified in it. And it was private property. I had every right to carry a gun. I had every right to defend myself. I had every right, because there was that imminent threat of great bodily harm or death, and he was within swinging distance at the point he ran by me. And so most of the parameters are there by which most people would say, well, that's justifiable. You had every right. And this is where I say, just because we have the right doesn't mean we use might. Because I think about, as a 17-year-old, what would my life have been like the rest of my life living with killing another man?
Right.
It was just not something we're designed to do. And I'm like, wow, I really thank God that things turned out the way they turned out, because I don't know where I would be. It would have thrown my trajectory way off, I'm sure. And
but now let's fast forward 5 years, because you're 22.
Okay.
And because you look 22. Yeah. If someone broke into your home now,
under my eyes.
If someone broke into your home now with a baseball bat and a 357, and they were threatening your wife and your family, what happens now? And let's just say that it's a split second decision, where it's not where he's standing outside and contemplating or takes off into the woods or anything, but he's in your home, and it's pretty obvious he's there to either cause harm to you or her or something.
Sure. Well, I was, we never know what we're going to do until we get there. I've never been in that position. I can speculate, and I can, based on my training and what I teach. But I will tell you, all the rules change when stress comes on. And so, and I always say, a gun is a tool of last resort. So that really needs to be the only thing. And I'll throw a scenario out there like that for my students. And I just say, your best objective, police call for backup when they're in over their head. Okay. Well, any kind of altercation, we're already in over our heads. That's the truth.
Right.
And so our number one objective needs to be to call the police. And our number one objective is to, unlike if you're a sailor, soldier, or cop, you start learning to understand that you want to take the fight to the enemy, not let the enemy bring the fight to you. And you use that using teams, using different tactics and different things, but you take the fight to the enemy. In this world of personal defense and just trying to survive life, we take on a different approach. We want to create distance from that. And so my objective will always be, number one, my family's safety. And, if it's just me by myself, I might engage things a lot differently than I would with my family. When my family's here, number one priority is safety. And so I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get them to a safe place. But in that instant, the first thing I would do based on my training is try to de-escalate the situation. Hey, listen, pal, you're barking up the wrong tree. I've got a gun. I know how to use it. Police are on their way. I'm going to try to use every calm technique I have in my repertoire to try to calm that down. And some people you can reason with, and some people you can't. And so everything changes by who, what, why, when, and where. And those things can be they're not static. They're evolving, and they change as they happen. And so this is where I tell people, if you think that you're going to do the right thing in that moment without some sort of training or pre-cognitive plan, backed up with training, It's just not going to happen. And even me, with all of my training, who knows? I mean, I can't say for certain that I would do it this way or that I would do it this way, because it is going to be a non-static moving matrix that I'm going to have.
Well, and it's kind of like the story you just shared, that your scenario to mow him down or pin him up against the building changed the moment A, you saw him again and it's a human being, and B, he's now holding a box of shells and a 357 because that wasn't part of your scenario.
Exactly.
He's a man with the bat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My truck, his baseball bat. Okay, I win. You know,
right. Now he can shoot back.
And that's where I tell people, you've got to train yourself, because it's not going to happen organically. It's not going to happen through osmosis by watching YouTube videos. You've got to acclimate your brain to making decisions under pressure, because, you know, even when we go out and we learn the basics and the fundamentals of how to shoot our gun and how to do it effectively, that's great, but that's a controlled environment. There's no back at you. You know, that target back there, it's non-threatening. It's not going to hurt.
And nobody's wearing that when they come in your house.
Exactly. They're not like, oh, here's the part we're going to shoot for.
Right.
And when it's got a face on it, or it's a real person, everything changes, because we're not designed to end that. And so, you know, I always tell folks, your number one objective needs to be to try to create distance, call the police, call for backup, let the police handle it. And it's a lot easier to when things go to court to say, hey, I told this individual many times, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight you.
Right.
I'm going to fight you. And they brought that fight to me. It's easier to say, hey, there was that threat of great bodily harm or death, because they kept bringing it to me.
Right.
When we can separate ourselves from that, it looks so much better on us, because most people that are reasonable are going to try to do that. They don't want to fight. They're trying to avoid it. And so,
yeah, and I think most people that break into homes aren't breaking into homes to, unless they're psychotic, to kill someone. They're breaking into a home to find easy money or something like that. And so when they encounter, you
know, that's what I always tell people. You know, the bad guy picks the time, place, and conditions, not us. So we're already at deficit. But, you know, and I always ask people, what do you suppose is the best home defense weapon there is? They're like, shotgun or this or that. And I'm like, no, an animal, a dog.
Yeah. Because, and we got a big one.
Yeah. When people are looking for an easy score and they hear an animal, they move on, because there's too much trouble to try to navigate whether this is going to be a mean dog, a nice dog. So they move on to a house where there's no animal.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the first line of defense. And then
I don't know if you and I talked about this, but I had heard a gentleman on a talk radio or something that was talking about, he was a defense guy in that, and he was talking about, you know, pepper spray and that, and he was like, he's not a big, he said, yeah, that can work at times, but he said in homes especially, what he'll tell people, because he was very pro-gun in that, but he was like, if you just want to squash the situation till the police get there, is he'll tell people, like in their hall closets or even in their bedroom under their bed, to keep a can of wasp spray, because it'll shoot 25 feet.
Yep.
And when you see that figure there at the door and you spray that stuff in their face, they're going to be very disoriented and fall to the ground. Meanwhile, the cops are coming and you might have a chance to subdue them or something. But, you know, he said, I would much rather spray 25 feet with foam than 5 feet away with some, you know, pepper spray that's probably going to also get in my eyes.
Yeah. This is why a lot of police officers don't like using OC, because the minute you spray somebody and then you handcuff them, then it's all over you. You throw them back in your patrol car.
You wipe your nose or your eyes.
Like, you know, you got all this crap in your eyes. And so, but it's definitely a non-lethal. You know, and I always tell folks, you know, if you can't take a life in defense of yours or a loved one, you have no business with a gun.
Oh, yeah.
That will further complicate things. And so, you know, I guess when I first started this endeavor, my goal was to arm America. It was to put a gun in every hand in America. And the more I do this, the more I realize we're not geared for that. And so I always tell people, I'm not trying to dissuade you. What I'm telling you is, if you're going to do it well. If you can't do it well, don't do it.
Right.
Because it is It is a losing endeavor at the end of the day, and that's the reality. And I guess I'm like, though I make a living at teaching people how to use their gun, it is not my objective is to always dissuade them from having to go that route, because at the end of the day, it's a losing endeavor on a lot of fronts, legally, emotionally, socially,
right.
all of it. It's just a losing endeavor, and you just if it's your only choice, then the chips fall where they fall, and you hope that you come out on the right side of it. But if we can avoid it, that's always in our best interest, and I unpack that a lot through the legal side of things, through the emotional side of things, social side of things. It's not something we ever want to have to do. So we pray to God that it never happens. But we prepare ourselves in case it does.
Exactly.
What is that saying? Prepare for the worst, expect the best, or however that goes. But
kind of like the ounce of prevention and all the.
Well, I would say the best defense is no defense at all.
Yeah.
And so, and then so I'm going to go down my list of quotes just so.
Okay. Just keep going. How many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, okay. I was hoping it wasn't like 39.
Whenever I come across a quote that really resonates. But the first one is "Ego is not your amigo."
Okay.
I don't care. And I'll tell that story a little bit later about what changed my mentality on that, because I got picked on a lot. Even being a taller kid, I got picked on a lot. And so I started taking martial arts, and I don't know if you remember those years.
Yep.
But I got relatively efficient at it. And the first fight I got into just it changed the way I even think about that whole thing. And so I've adopted that. Ego is not your amigo. I don't care how big, bad, fast, and tough you think you are. There's always somebody out there bigger, badder, faster, and tougher. So then the other one, operating by emotion will always cause a commotion and never works out right when we let our emotions elicit or dictate a response to something that we can't take back.
Yeah, and it's for relationships, for work, for everything.
I don't care what it is. In fact, I remember playing video games with my little brother, and my poor little brother. I know I pushed his buttons a lot. I
was a little brother too.
I'm huge on psychological warfare. If I can beat somebody in their mind, I've already got. And so I remember playing video games, and I just pushed his buttons. Man, I just kicked your butt. That was awesome. And I was like poking the bear. And he would at some point get so enraged that he couldn't even think straight. And that's why I always tell people, don't let your emotions elicit responses, because they just don't work out. Nothing is rational when you're emotional. And so we need to approach things from a little more linear standpoint. So the other quote is, do not pre-plan, prepare. So start learning how to, because those environments are not static. They evolve and they change as they're happening. And so,
and that goes back to both the stories, that if you pre-plan, you're planning on a bunch of unknowns.
Exactly. So, and you're planning on killing somebody that maybe doesn't warrant that.
Right. They're not even there to kill you. I mean, because apparently even, was it Sam or what was his? Yeah. Sam. He wasn't there to kill anyone. He was there to kill himself.
Nope.
And so, and he knew, I can go to the pawn shop and maybe get a gun, and a baseball bat sure helps me get into the case that I need to get the gun from.
Yep.
But his intent, I mean, if he wanted to kill you guys, he probably could have.
Oh, absolutely.
And he wasn't there for that.
Thing I know about psychology too, the more I understand how the brain works, back then, it was the family. It was like, well, he wouldn't hurt you. And like, and I would have agreed with that.
Right.
Now, knowing what I know about psychology, when we cross that moral border, that moral compass that God put in all of us, once we step over that threshold, it's not too far to here.
Right.
And so now I'd say, I don't care what his intentions were.
Right.
That environment changes based on a lot of things.
It's like saying my dog won't bite you. Well, your dog sure looks like he will right now, and I've been bitten by dogs that won't bite before. So
Oh, I don't know how many times I've been told that my dog won't bite you, and then it bites me.
Right.
Well, am I the exception? What's going on here? So here's another. This is a front sight. So in my tenure, as an instructor. I was an instructor out at Front Sight. I was an instructor for Forward Movement, which is a local facility. I'll talk about those things at some other episode in the show. But our saying there was, you can't shoot your way out of a valley. If you're in a bad situation, trying to shoot your way out is not going to solve it. And you also, if you're shooting badly, you can't keep shooting and improve.
Right.
You've got to figure out what you're doing wrong. So there again, you can't shoot your way out of a valley by pounding rounds down range. And it's kind of funny because I always tell people that hire me for private tutoring. Hey, I just want to get to know my gun and know the basics and all that. They're like, how many rounds do I bring? I'm like, none. What? Just bring your gun to my shop, and I'm going to show you how to effectively get the fundamentals and learn how to shoot your gun without firing a round. It doesn't require sending a lot of rounds down range and wasting your money. And especially today's day, for the ammo, oh my God.
You got to take out a loan before you go to the range.
I always tell people I can teach you how to shoot effectively without firing a round. So then when you do find a box of shells and you want to go out and practice, you're going to see a lot better results on that target because you've learned how, what, why. And you know me, we're both kind of technical guys. I mean, I grew up MacGyvering things. And so, but I also understood that if you understand the process by which things work, it's a lot easier to troubleshoot and fix. But if you don't know what's wrong, you can't fix anything.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same way with your shooting. If you don't know what you're doing wrong, then how are you going to correct it? And so I'm a very technique in a very, I'm not going to tell you to do something. I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm going to tell you why we do it this way. So I'm a big, and I do that in my management style too. I won't tell you what to do. I'll show you what to do.
Right.
I'll set the pace, show you how to do it good, do it fast, and not just check boxes, but actually be effective at it. And that's my MO. If I can show you, you're going to be a better employee. And so I'm all about show. I will show.
Oh yeah, show and application, hands-on. Yep. And I love to know the reason why. I'll ask that at events and everything. Why am I doing this? And it's amazing to see how many people don't get that question very often because they're like, wow, I've never really had to. That's a great question, and I'll tell you why. But usually people just go do it. Well, I want to know why because I want it to make sense,
Yeah. Well, understanding the process helps understand how to fix. And especially in the copier business, back when everything was analog, when I was a service manager, if you understood the 7 steps it took to make a copy, you knew where the breakdown was. Because if it doesn't do this, then it's not going to do this and this. So understanding that process, and it was kind of funny because people would hand me a piece of paper, and I'm like, you need a new developer or new corona wires, I could tell by looking at a piece of paper, because I understood what it took to make it right, how to fix it, and so that really needs to be your approach on this personal defense. Learn why we do things and what's causing this, so then we can troubleshoot it and fix it. Yep. So the other, another one of my favorite quotes: "I can teach skill, I can't teach will." And I can give you all the tools, but if you don't take those tools, take that knowledge and turn it into a skill, is it of no effect to you? And so that's why in my classes, a lot of times I'll drill people on that. I'll keep asking them the question. And I told my last group on Saturday, I hope that you go home and dream about sight alignment, sight picture, take the slack out, press. I hope that those are the words that you hear resonate in your brain when you go home, or tap it, rack it, flip it, whatever that technique or that malfunction clearance is or whatever. I want them to dream about it, so then they can turn that knowledge into a skill.
And I do. And it's interesting talking, and you and I talk all the time without cameras.
A lot of problems together.
Yes, we do. And it's funny because we're coming from 2 very separate points, but usually the solution is obvious no matter what world you come from.
Yeah.
One of the solutions, because we both know there could be 15 different solutions. Yeah. But I dream about my business, and if something went wrong or if something went right, I will dream about it, or I will daydream about it and figure out how I can make it better the next time. And I love to be able to break down those elements and ask myself those what ifs, and then include that and go, hey, solution. We just found a solution.
Yeah.
It's great.
Absolutely. I always tell people, in this idea of ego's not your amigo, we should never want to try to beat people. We
Mm-hmm.
just want to make ourselves better versions of what we were yesterday. And that's
Right.
always been my objective. I don't care about competing or trying to be better than that person. I just want to be better than I was at it yesterday. And if I can improve each day, then each day I'm a better version.
And see, and I will, when we had our concession trailer, I'll say that I am competitive, but not in a mean way.
Yeah.
I was one that I love to see other people showing up, selling the same product, knowing I'm going to beat you.
Yeah.
But not ever go over and, yeah, I mean, because I knew we were doing it better. We had better prices. We had better service. So I just knew you're challenging me without ever saying a word because you showed up. And I'm going to beat you, but I'm not going to rub your face in it or anything else. And
that's a drive issue, not a I mean, though it's competition, that creates the drive. And so it becomes about drive and not,
Yeah, there was no anger. Yeah. And I remember, I think I told you in Fruitland, Idaho, making the guy that had the $250,000 RV that sold the same thing that we did on a trailer that I built myself for, it was under $6,000 and then added all the stuff. And he took off early that day because the whole line went from his place to our place and never went back. And I just remember being, yep, yeah, we did that. Yep.
Quality succeeds.
Yep.
All right. And my last quote, which I tell people, if you're going to carry a gun, you'll never lose a gunfight you're not in. So
it's very true.
Just because you have it. And I always tell folks too, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of boils down to that whole incident with Sam. I had every right. Just because I could didn't
mean you should. Yeah.
And so in that instance, I just really thank God every day that I didn't do it.
Yeah. See, and I think that's a great quote because I've never lost a fight to this day because I've never been in one, but I've talked myself out of many. And we know of a couple brothers that lived in Payette that now apparently you and I have talked about one of them that now lives close to us and is a family guy in that. But in Payette, these two brothers were very well known for they're going to beat the crap out of you. And one night, I guess it was my turn because I was always cocky and funny, but I never wanted to fight anyone. Yeah. And so over by Circle K in Payette, I remember hearing across the street, "What, do you have a problem?" And I'm like, what? Looking, and they're trying to get me to go and everything. So I went over there and just started talking about, everybody has problems and that. So what problems are you, to where it starts confusing them. And it was finally one of them just looked at the other one and said, "Come on, let's go. He's not worth it." Because I'm just babbling and babbling, probably peeing my pants. But it was like, I don't want to fight you. So let's see if, I can confuse you. And then they finally just went, let's leave this guy. So, but yeah, I've never lost a fight. Because I've never been in one. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yep. And like I said, I don't care how big, bad, fast, and tough you think you are. There is always somebody out there bigger, better. Mm-hmm. We all played King of the Hill in school, right?
Oh yeah.
So what happened? Like every day, sometimes every day, maybe once a week. New guy, new king.
Oh yeah.
Always somebody there waiting to dethrone you.
And that big beefy guy that's won the last 10 rounds, all of a sudden we figure out if you go from one side, I go from one side, and we take them out of the knees, then I don't care which one of us are king. We just dethrone that guy.
Well, people are always looking to be the top dog. And so if you're never looking to be the top dog, you never – it's amazing to me. I've been carrying a gun concealed for 30-plus years. Been handling guns for 40-plus years. You haven't taken it off either, right? It's been on your body for 30. You shower. Yeah, where you see like trees and cars fuse into a tree. Right. It's part of you now. It's an appendage. Forgot where I was going. Thank you. That's the age part of me going. Yes. I do that all the time where I walk in a room
and I'm just trying to figure out why I walked into this room. So then I walked to the other room, figure out why I needed to go in that other room.
Back there.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll call it. And
Okay.
everybody that's tuning in or is going to tune in later, thank you for watching. So in future episodes, we're going to have some ads where I'm going to try to do some reviews on gear. I'm going to talk about gears. I'm going to try to give you a tip of the day that could save your life, relating to this concealed carry thing. And it might be about gear. It might be about technique. It might be about psychology. But I'm going to try to put out some tips of the day. And those will be a little more hopefully produced. Depends on the bandwidth of my of my work. So I got a lot of things going on. And we're always sponsored by Idaho Enhanced Academy, always sponsored by Ultimate Hybrid Technologies, which is my holster company. And then folks like Phil at Mountain States Media, Phil Squared Podcast. So I'll have different guests on at different times, and I'll have Phil back again because we love to chat and talk and banter back and forth. And so we'll have Phil back on again and his cat.
Yes. And I have two others that might show up too the next time.
Okay. Well, I'm just waiting for Hodar to jump on your lap.
Yes, he's outside.
He's a big dog. So thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
And I don't even know how to. Oh, there we go. All right. I'm new to this, so bear with me as I figure this technology out. Thank you.
Yep.